Much like Moreau's flooded village, Resident Evil Village has a lot hiding beneath the surface. There's tons of little details that you might have missed while playing through the newest Resi game, and almost countless ideas, concepts, and characters that didn't make it into the final game. But take heed. This video spoils the events of Resident Evil Village, so if you haven't played or finished the game, look away now. Anyway, I've rounded up all of these little details, and we should really just get started because there's a lot of them to get through. So here's 62 things you didn't know about Resident Evil Village, even if you played it. At the beginning of Resident Evil Village, Mia was originally going to be in a wheelchair after the amount she suffered during the events of Resident Evil 7 took a toll on her body. Worryingly, Evelyn's influence is visible in Rose's jacket underneath her coat, which used to be Ethan's, as is fairly obvious I think, as she's clothed in bits of dark green, which the art director says is Evelyn's colour.
Hey Dad. Happy birthday.
Rose was going to fight some of Ethan's enemies. Don't ask me how, I assume as a teenager rather than as a baby? Probably with her mold abilities, which were hinted at near the end of Resident Evil Village.
I can show you things even Chris doesn't know I can do.
Chris Redfield was originally going to visit the Winterses in Civ clothes. But then we wouldn't have got that killer peacoat, so thank God that didn't happen.
He's coming. Daddy's coming.
Zoe Baker is alive and is an investigative journalist who delved into the cover-up around the Dulvey incident, i.e. the events of Resident Evil 7.
Hey, one of those is mine.
Hey, Alpha.
Chris's Hound Wolf squad are fully fleshed out. We just didn't get to see them in detail, but they were going to be introduced in the game at one point in development, and their names are Umber Eyes, the veteran sniper, K9, the young dog handler, Lobo, the machine gunner, Night Howl, the communications expert, and Tundra, who is a former undercover agent for DEA. In fact, when Chris infiltrates the village, the game was going to focus on each member of the Hound Wolf squad one by one.
Maybe releasing infectious particulates.
The Duke was originally going to make his entrance in a runaway carriage with his horses running wild, but he ended up getting a much more low-key introduction instead.
A hero searching for his daughter.
During this scene, the space you are tried in by the Four Lords has always been used in the past by Mother Miranda and the Lords themselves to pass judgment on heretics from the village. Their judge, jury and executioner, unsurprisingly.
You mean you'll screw around with him in private, and where's the fun in that?
Ada Wong was going to appear and save you from the trial with the Four Lords in a Plague Doctor-esque getup, but this was cut due to a number of quote-unquote conflicting scenarios. Don't worry, Ada, we'll meet again. The golden ring surrounding the Kudu parasite in the village icon symbolises the sun, space, and eternity, hinting that the Kudu is endless.
She's just a baby.
The black and white triangles in the centre of the four houses here is actually a simplified version of the village's crow feather icon, which Umbrella took inspiration from for their own logo.
It's only a riddle if you don't know the answer.
The crests of the Four Lords have a bunch of hidden iconography that reflect their qualities. The Dimitrescu crest is a flower with two swords to represent feminine power, with the cross in the centre being associated with vampires. Or vampires' intense dislike of the cross, but you know what I mean. House Beneviento's crest is a moon and a sun, symbolising fantasy and reality, and hinting at Donna's ability to create hallucinations, as well as reflecting the dark of Donna's look and the bright white of Angie's wedding dress. House Moreau's beautiful mermaid is meant to be a stark contrast to Moreau's grotesque body. And lastly, House Heisenberg's crest is a horse because Heisenberg is a strong, sturdy kind of guy. Plus, it's based on the knight chess piece.
You're few.
Take a look at Angie's horrific face, and you'll see that it resembles the sun and moon from the Benevento crest, and the same goes for Donna's face. Her scar from the Kudu parasite mimics the shape of the moon across her face. Donna is dressed in black mourning clothes, and Angie is in a wedding dress with flowers, as the pair are meant to represent death and life. So it's even more fitting that Donna's base concept was that she's a ghost, hence being unseen for most of the game, even in the Benevento mansion, and when you do see her, she's exceedingly quiet.
It's over.
You were originally going to be chased across the rope bridge to the Benevento mansion by a ton of enemies, but this was abandoned in the end. To be honest, I prefer it without the enemies, as it backs up the eerie, spooky feeling during the walk to the Benevento mansion. In the early stages of development, the Beneventos were going to be a ghost family, with, quote-unquote, rake-thin parents and children wearing strange masks. The wife was going to have thrown herself into the waterfall due to a tragic incident in her past, which was an idea the developers toyed with for Donna's backstory too. Originally, Donna was going to be the village doctor who you'd go to visit, and she didn't have the very creepy Angie at that point. The Capcom devs considered giving Donna a very dark past and have her entire family commit suicide by throwing themselves off the waterfall, like the mother from the Draft Benevento family. In the end, we know her parents are dead, but not by what means. And Donna isn't a doctor, but the sole survivor of the Beneventos, with her creepy-ass doll, Angie. The doll of Mia in the basement of the Benevento mansion, which you open up and fiddle with, was intended to be a puzzle similar to a Chinese puzzle box. When there were plans to make Donna the village doctor, the doll in the basement that looks like Mia was originally going to be a corpse that looked like Mia instead.
You are so kind to me, daughters.
Dimitrescu's look is based on a combination of 1960s New Look fashion and the Japanese yukai Hashaku-sama, which means 8-foot lady. Those 3 black roses close to her heart also symbolise her daughters, Bella, Daniela, and Cassandra. Aww. Lady Dimitrescu has to drink blood to keep up her regenerative and body mutation abilities. In fact, she's so incredibly tall because of those regenerative abilities going a little bit overboard. Lady Dimitrescu's original design was a bewitching vampire with giant garden clippers, and she looks a lot like her daughters here. I'm pretty sure you can actually see the design of her daughters in this draft, with the black hood and everything.
I don't want to die.
The enemies in the castle are all female, every single one of them. The Dimitrescus drain men of their blood, while the women are turned into both the normal and the flying slaves. The Assassin's Dagger you used to stab Dimitrescu with has its own backstory. It was originally used by a man a very long time ago to try and kill Dimitrescu in a failed assassination attempt. She sealed it away in the tower with his corpse because it was still a threat to her, though I'm not sure why she didn't just have it destroyed, and she ended up paying the ultimate price for this mistake. Dimitrescu was chosen as one of the house's names as it sounds a bit like Dracula, which also means Child of Dragon. That's why Capcom went for the dragon vampire design for Lady Dimitrescu's boss fight, with some tweaks so she looks like a massive vampire with huge fangs. Ethan was going to fight Dimitrescu in a small house in the castle grounds instead of in the Tower of Worship. Turning to House Moreau, the stuff on Moreau's back is actually his enlarged and mutated brain. and the crown around his head is made of villager bones that he made himself. Lovely. He's based on the Japanese river yokai called Kappa. Instead of it being his enlarged brain, the growth on Moreau's back was going to be the absorbed body of a girl he once had feelings for. Ew. Behind the scenes, it turns out that Moreau has a love of cheese, join the club, and when he's not being killed by Ethan, he can be found watching old romance movies and being sad. I think when you meet him in his domain for the first time, he is actually watching an old romantic movie if you look closely. Ethan was going to run into Moreau searching for corpses for his experiments in the flooded village section. The flooded village was originally going to be a European fishing village, but that proved too difficult to create, so Capcom went with the generic flooded village instead.
Lycans and gentlemen!
Heisenberg is based on Frankenstein, hence his electric inner organs and his ability to control magnetic fields.
Let's see what you're Ethan Winters.
Heisenberg's boss form is based on the Royal Moth Caterpillar, with added metal scrap and chainsaws and whatnot. The Soldat Panzer, with all its added metalwork, is based on Western medieval armour and helmets. The heads of the Soldat jet are meant to look like fighter planes. A parasite was going to jump out of the Soldat's chests when you shoot it. Ugh. Originally, Sturm, aka Propellerhead, was supposed to be Heisenberg's real father. Don't ask me how that would have worked. To begin with, you were going to defeat Heisenberg during his boss fight by using falling transmission towers. Heisenberg was going to be a twin, and his mother was going to be in the game as a subject for brain experiments with an exposed brain. Ouch. Heisenberg's father was going to be the leader of the village, and Heisenberg's boss fight with the massive mechanical mutation was originally going to be with him instead.
Hey, don't I get a say in this?
Silence! Mother Miranda has the crests of the four lords in her stole, with her overall design, including the wings, being based on the concept of a crow queen. She looks like a seraph too, if you ask me, which is an angel with 3 pairs of wings, which does fit in with her miracle that she did in the past, and her saintly image among the villagers.
Your body certainly isn't normal.
Long ago, a young girl went with her mother to pick berries for her.
The concept for the picture book Mia reads at the beginning, named Village of Shadows, was based on pop-up books and chigiri-e, Japanese torn paper pictures.
The rascal broke free from mother's grasp and vanished into the trees. And with a click of his fingers...
The girl's hair colour in the Village of Shadows matches Rose's hair in the post-credits cutscene.
He coaxed. Throat became bone dry.
The Bat Lord is white because it's based on Dimitrescu and her white dress, and has 3 black bats appearing alongside it, which represent Dimitrescu's 3 daughters.
Eyes upon her, the girl recalled mother's scary bedtime tale.
There is more variety in the Lycan designs than any enemy in the Resident Evil series so far. Lycans can be bold, with hair, on horseback, wielding different weapons, including bows and arrows. And finally, they can even be heavily armoured, as you'll find out later in the game. As my shotgun and pipe bombs know all too well. In addition to all those types, there was also going to be a Lycan that commanded 2 chained Verkalak, those big dog Lycans that you kill with a magnum. This big guy is named Uriah, and is the Lycan's boss. The reason he's in charge of the rabid crowds is that he used to be the leader of the village, and maintains his dominant position now he's been mutated with Kadu. Uriah Strager is his older brother, and the protector of the Megamycete, and if you look closely, is also wearing a wolf helmet at the beginning of the mini-boss fight. In the Village of Shadows storybook, the girl is taken underneath the full moon, and Rose is also taken underneath the full moon too in Resident Evil Village's story.
A beautiful golden.
The field in front of Louisa's doomed house has scarecrows as well as goat bone constructs that are meant to ward off evil, much like the necklaces the villagers wear. The BSAA mutated bioweapon soldier from the ending of Resident Evil Village was left over from Resident Evil 7. There was supposed to be a three-way battle between Chris, BSAA, and the Lycans near the end of the game when you take control of Chris. The final, gargantuan mutation of Mother Miranda is meant to look like the village symbol, with the parasite in the centre and feathers around the outside. Ethan was going to have a backpack as his inventory instead of a suitcase. There was going to be a scene where the young men of the village drank from a chalice and turned into Lycans somewhere in the stronghold, but it was cut. To start with, they had a man as the leader of the village instead of Mother Miranda, and he was going to transform into a dragon-like monster, but this ended up being used for Lady Dimitrescu's boss fight instead. The Duke was going to be a fifth lord in the early drafts of the game.
Something of value.
You'll make the best vintage yet.
In Resident Evil Village, they wanted to try and use designs that didn't look like regular humans after they used a photo scanning technique for Resident Evil 7, which is why most of the characters in Village, like Dimitrescu, Angie, and Moreau, look more monstrous and less human than the largely normal-looking Bakers in Resident Evil 7.
This is my territory.
The typewriter you use to save your game is based on a 60s design.
Naturally.
There were originally going to be item boxes that let you store objects, like in the Resident Evil 2 remake and Resident Evil 7, but they decided to change the game to be more actiony, like Resident Evil 4, so they ended up removing them. In an early design, for the safe rooms, they used an old-timey camera as a save point instead of a typewriter. The hag was meant to be the model for Mother Miranda, but she was eventually redesigned to be the Crow Queen-like figure we see in the final game. Mother Miranda was also initially going to be a researcher investigating the village's strange creatures, but they ended up going with an almost immortal, mold-infused woman instead, which I think was the right choice.
My desires will be fulfilled!
Another thing about Miranda is that she was going to be sitting upon a giant throne carried by Lycans during the ceremony before her boss fight. Extra as all heck, but God, it would have looked cool. So this is a bit near the end of the game that you might not have seen if you skipped the credits. Miranda became a saint to the village when she created a miracle and saved the life of a sick child by injecting it with the Kadu parasite. The whole village, overcome with astonishment, then got the same treatment too. However, some of those that she injected turned into Lycans, and that's what kicked off the events we now know so well in the newly Lycan-infested village. That's it, we made it to the end. That was 62 things you didn't know about Resident Evil Village, even if you played it. If you enjoyed the video, thanks very much, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Eurogamer as we have a new video out every single day. Why not follow us on Instagram too? You can find us at Team Eurogamer. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go and try and find somewhere to buy Lady Dimitrescu's hat because it's starting to get sunny, and I'm not into that. See you next time.